So I wanted you to recite some, so that'll be perfect.
Okay. I think 2 of them aren't finished, but okay, we're on, Mr. Host.
Yeah. So
I forgot this was still a Soulogy Network production.
Yeah. Let's play the soulogy intro.
Oh, you want to play the soulogy intro?
Yeah.
Or you want to play the Monarch? Because I have.
Let's play the soulogy intro.
Okay, we'll play the soulogy intro.
Yeah.
We'll have to come up with a intro for you.
Yeah. We'll bring.
You know, I made one for Sandra Mathis in her show.
Yeah.
With her voice behind. Oh yeah, but you got Israel. Yeah, you can make one. Oh, all right.
Hey. We got carried away connecting, and then we went over.
I know.
I loved it. So I was reflecting last night.
Yeah.
And I know I shared some of this with you, but I haven't talked about it. Like, I don't think everyone knows it, but just how we connected. And it was, I had been writing the poetry for a couple of years, but I still wasn't really ready to recite or I just wasn't ready to release it publicly. So I had been watching Soul Speaks 5D probably for like a year and a half or 2 years. And finally I felt like, okay, I'm ready to make this move. I want to release the poetry into the world. So I had, how our mind works, I'm like thinking I'm just going to write Todd, we'll connect. But I had written you a private message, and it might have been another 6 months, maybe even a year before you opened the message. Right. And which was really cool though, because it had been so long that I had forgot that I had even sent a message. And so just the synchronicity and how life works is, I remember I finally like hit this stage where I was like, wow, like just in life, like I felt ready to release the poetry, and yet I didn't see anything, like nothing happening, like nothing was lining up or making sense yet. So I had this like, we all have these moments where we speak out to the universe. And so I was just like, you know what? Like I've felt ready, but I guess it's not my time to share. And so I'm just going to take a little break. I'm going to stop making videos for a while, and I'm just going to enjoy my family. And I swear to you, a day later, you wrote to me and you're like, hey, yeah, let's do it. And then when I opened the message, I was like, I had to like read the message I sent because I forgot I'd sent one. So that's the first time I went on your show. And so when I was reflecting last night, I just thought, what's meant for us is what happens effortlessly.
Yeah.
Right. Like in the old paradigm, we fought so hard.
Yeah.
And nothing made sense. And we were going against the flow. And now here, I don't know how I'm right here, but I know that it feels so right. And I'm so grateful. And I wouldn't have it any other way. You had to be the first person, because like I was telling Melissa the other day, I feel like you are emblematic of a threshold that my spirit crossed, where my relationships no longer reflect my pain, but they reflect spirit to spirit.
Wow, that's pretty deep.
So I just want to thank you.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to start with a poem that came through for you about you.
Okay.
And yeah, I just kind of, wanted to connect to your heart, and I wanted to see the world through your soul. So I asked for that experience, and this is what came through. So this is you speaking to all of us through me. I found my heart in the night. I danced with my pain as the stars held me tight. I've watched churches burn as duality put on a robe to teach me about God. Success measured by the ruby and the pearl. Feeling was for the weak, and a mind that questioned belonged to the devil. I turned my back on this world. They thought I was crazy. At times I believed them. But if injustice were justice and fear was love, if words were meant to be dead and hearts deprived of feeling, why did I feel so alone? There are 1,000 ways up the mountain, but everyone must climb for themselves. The only way to heaven is through hell, and the only way back to love is through our pain. I found my heart in the night, and as I surrendered to the unknown, my tears turned into day. I woke up to the song of the blackbird, sunrise, and the first touch of light. Oh, the majesty of a man without a home, who found a kingdom living inside of his soul. Now I wonder how many angels sleep on the streets.
What am I supposed to do with that? Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just felt like when that poem was coming through, I was just, you're a symbol of truth. You're a symbol of love. And your poetry, the poetry that moves through you reflects that. And I know that you make us all feel safe, and you've created a space where we all have been able to move into the deeper dimension of our true selves. And so I just wanted to start with that poem and tell you I love you.
Love you too.
Yeah.
When did you write that? You didn't write it last night, did you?
It was like 1 a.m.
Are you shitting me?
No.
Because I woke up, I went to sleep. Well, I was laying down, and then I woke up, and I couldn't go back to sleep. So then and it would have been about 3 o'clock in the morning, so it would have been about midnight your time. Is that right? No, it would have been 1 o'clock your time. Okay, so I came down here and I made a hot toddy, and and I just started writing, listening to music, which I hadn't done in a really long time. And the reason I haven't done it is because I haven't taken the time. And I'm not really used to writing unless I'm deeply moved. So much of so much of what I wrote it did come from the pain. So I try to tap into that place, and it's not so easy anymore because things are getting better and better and better. But I don't know. Ever since I went to Sedona, everything just accelerated.
Yeah.
Incredibly. And anyway, so yeah, the same time you were writing that, I came down here and I started writing. And it turned into like 3 different poems. And I put one out last night. Let's see. It's funny because you said that about hell. So I ended up writing this poem, and I thought it was a poem, but it was about 3 poems. And so the first, it's always about the journey, like the I am soul, but it's really the we are soul. And I used to get overcomplicated, and I didn't like explain things well enough. Some people didn't get what I wrote, so I was trying to be aware of that last night because I hadn't really written anything in a while. And hang on, Morgan's going to blow my nose. Oh, I meant to turn off the mic when I did that. I did that one time when I burped. I turned the mic off and I burped and it came out. So, yeah. So I started writing this poem about the I am soul, the journey, about me, I guess. And obviously Morgan's right there. So then it started turning into this kind of like cosmically hot ode to her. And so I had to cut it off because it was 4:00 in the morning. And I had to be up by 10 for a show. So I'm like, I got to go to bed, Yeah. So, no, I better hang on. So anyway, so this is the one I did last night. I wonder if I can do it in your voice.
Yeah.
With what we come with. No, I can't. I can't do that. So, okay, thank you for that. Release. With what we come, with what we leave. The gift is in between. The highest love, the loneliest screams, 0 point equality. We are divine human beings. An angel's fall, 'tis born again, another moon, another sun, another shadow lost, another fear undone. I am constant as the maker that be. I love you. It is within you. I find me. I am soul, your soul, and soul is the goddess. But I kept going. I had these little, what do you call it? Like, these streams come out of you. And so I haven't put all this together, but it was like frightened. No, I'm sorry. I am soul. Blameless, shameless, frightened, faultless, fearless, mighty, righteous. Clearly, dearly, naturally, vividly, forever, infinitely. Bleeding hearts, mended spirits, collapsing lives, coming alive. I am the Trinity, heaven and hell's divinity. 'Tis the in-between, the higher heart, blended freedoms, friended scars. She is the first memory, the scent sent for me. Wisdom of the trees, this galactic prodigy. And I'll finish it eventually. So yeah, I was doing it the same time you were doing it last night, which is not a coincidence. And it's not a coincidence that I'm like in this state that I'm in, doing your first show. It's not a coincidence.
No. Well, it's like I had mentioned on when I was talking to Shanine the other day that your soul speaks my language. Like we speak in poetry, our hearts. And I was trying to when I was just feeling your heart, it was like when you talk about the dichotomy, I don't feel, even though you're real passionate and animated, I don't feel a lot of affliction. I feel someone who's just seen and felt so deeply for so long and knows they're here to help people see and feel again. That's what I feel when you express yourself. I don't feel the frequency of judgment when you're like saying, no, we're one, like it's not conceptual. I feel it. It radiates, it emanates from your being, and in the writing, it's saturated in love. And when I was talking about my experiences the other day, like, the brain injury and coming out were like two of the defining moments for me. And I couldn't help it when I was tapping into the poem. Like the poem was like showing me, right? Like there was a point in your life where all you had was the stars. All you had was the night. And, Rumi, who's one of my favorite poets, he was like a really like prestigious philosopher and even almost like a priest before he shifted consciousness.
Yeah.
And when he started to shift, when he had his awakening, he literally walked away from like the priesthood and philosophy, and he was well regarded and everyone thought he was going crazy. And he would, people would see him just dancing, but he was like reciting, he would say he was reciting to the beloved. And it's like, I almost had that experience of, and I know you've talked to me about how you would dance.
Yeah.
So I almost had that experience of what, like you opening in the night, surrounded by stars that were guiding you and watching over you and holding you. And so I kind of wanted to hear from you, because the poem kind of intrigued this desire to understand deeper. Like for you, what was that like underneath the stars? Like what was the feeling? What did you see? What can you show us through your eyes?
It's weird because those 2 years, even after I came out of those 2 years and I started to, or soulogy started to take on a bigger, had a bigger stream online because now I had a laptop and I was putting my pictures to words. But it's like it's like I put those 2 years behind me, and I'll go back to what you said specifically. I'm bringing out what's coming in.
Yeah.
It's like I put those 2 years behind me right away. I mean, I would talk about it because it was the basis of my transformation. But almost like these traumas that we all have, and even though it was a transformation, it was a severe trauma. And I realize now, with what's been going on the last few months in particular, probably this year, I've watched people really suffer as they're having all these deaths. And I over the year, I've realized the value of those 2 years, and I kind of had an inkling of it, but I realized that I kind of did it backwards, I guess, because I'm not going through all that. I had to let go of everything. When I say everything, and I'm getting to the stars, but when I say everything, I first time in my life. I didn't have kids in my house for 23 years, and I also didn't have a house or a car or a job. I'd been a six-figure senior executive for many years. I was very successful, but everything was beyond chaos. It was worse than that. It was like not quite a horror film, but it was like a fantasy, like a dark, dark fantasy. So when everything did happen, and I lost everything, including my freedom for a while, incarceration, there was addiction, there was a self-hatred, which is really crazy because those 2 years, every single day and every single night, I had divine episodes, literally apparitions and all kinds of encounters, and you couldn't have been closer to the light than I was. There was no way. I don't give a shit who you were. And that's just my own truth. But at the same time, it was the most distorted, dark fantasy you can ever imagine. And there was a convergence of the physical and the non-physical, and because I literally was in dimension much of the day, which really challenged my sanity. So the stars. So I would be walking around knowing how beautiful and big my heart is, wondering how the hell did this all happen? And I knew it happened because I wouldn't let go of love. And I don't mean earth love. I mean real love. Real love when you hold space. Not when you sacrifice yourself and suffer as a result of blindness, but I just at a higher level knew that I made the right choices. And although I was wild and crazy and literally certifiably questionable in terms of my mental illness at times, and rightfully so, depending on whose perspective it was, I was still purely in the light. So as I would be in a park at night or walking around, I did a lot of walking because I found that was the only way I could keep my sanity if I wasn't dancing in the club. I would look at the stars all the time, and I wouldn't see stars. I would see, I don't know, I would see, I guess like an Akasha call. Like I could look anywhere and find anything I needed. And I think most of all, I could actually see myself. And hear words like, don't take it so tough. This isn't even real. And I'm on a park bench starving. I lost 30 pounds during that time. I was 20 pounds skinnier than when I got out of high school. And, but I would say, well, then, it sure didn't feel that way. But the answer would always come in and just tell me, it won't be long. It's not going to be anything that's going to be fast track. It's literally step by step, and whatever you need, you can, reach up here and grab what you need. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know till later when I met Morgan. Someone explained to me what working in dimension was and all that. But I don't know. I always knew that everything I knew innately was true. That there was one God, goddess, and that there was one golden rule, and that we were all one unique and equal soul. And what I was saying is that I look at this year and I see all the attachments that people are having to let go of, labels, everything. And it made me look back at those 2 years and realize not that I did it all, but I'm not going through that because I did most all of that. Kids, job, reputation, uh, self-esteem, freedom, morals, ethics, uh, self-respect. So those 2 years were a trauma. But I say that in the highest reverence because I'm lucky. I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate that I'm not having to deal with a lot of the things that people are now. I'll give you one last example. So I know there's some big stuff going on because I can tell from the flow of my own life. And one of those things would be abundance, what we might call abundance. And the end of September, I think, or the latter part of September, I think, was a huge period of expansion. And the first part of October has been a huge integration that's been gut wrenching for some. I can tell by the post and over the last few days, all flow has stopped, and it's not just Todd, and it's not just Todd and Morgan. It's everybody, everywhere, and I'm okay with that. I was actually thinking about that today. I thought, man, I always usually have a little bit of money, and this isn't about the money. This is a point. And I thought, I don't have any money.
Right.
$6 to go get a hamburger because I need a hamburger because my body's like you're talking about with Israel. My body's like screaming for meat, and I'm not that big a meat eater. But I thought to myself, I was sick of driving. I was like, well, why aren't you concerned about this? And I thought, dude, this is nothing. He lived on the streets and ate at McDonald's 5 days a week off the dollar menu and learned to alchemize food and turn it into nutrients. And I don't think that I'm going back, and I don't think the world is going back. And I think that just like with you writing and saying, I want to come out with my poetry, you send the letter out and it doesn't get a response and you let go. And then you get a windfall. And I think that's where we're at. I think that the weight and the volume and the mass of the windfall, the degree of mother load that it is determined by the period of integration and how much we surrender, not to anything, but to our own conceptions of self.
Yeah.
And this is where our training in learning to love our traumas and see them for the gold that they are benefits us in terms of learning to let go of the higher perceptions that we think we are.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter who we channel, and it doesn't matter how well I can write poetry and you can sound like God with your voice. It doesn't matter any of that. It's we're getting beyond that, and this is pretty. It's pretty radical, and it's more than challenging. It's pretty radical to the emerging self, and it's pretty freaky.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of evidence of that, especially if you look at those who've been out, some of those who have been out in a big way in the community, and bless them for the role they've served us for, or that they've served. So projection and polarization and extreme inflammatory talk and almost irrational behavior. So if that's a mirror, then I'm on my toes looking at it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that the way I see it now is the universe is going to take everything away from you, every single solitary thing. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to, but it will.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee it. You can etch it in stone. It will take everything away from you if you don't, as Morgan says, pull your finger out. Okay?
Yeah.
And what pull your finger out means is
Let go.
let go, but that letting go has nothing to do with anyone else. It's only letting go of things that are contained within your field, within your dominion of thought, within your collaboration with the universe and that internal dialogue. These are things that nobody can hear and nobody can see and nobody can feel, right?
Yes.
It has nothing to do. I don't have to give up anything or anyone. That's not surrender. That's spiritual bypassing now, in my opinion. What you have to give up is what you think you are. Okay? Because what you think you are is typically an indication of what you think you are not. I lost everything. And I don't say that in a self-serving way. I say that I just chose to go that route. I chose to use my head as a battering ram and go that route. If I told you stories of those 2 years, and I could do this. I don't have to. I would scare the living shit out of people. But I can see now that it's, I can see the value of it because I can see I'm living the consequences of it because I'm watching other people really, really struggle. And it's going to be okay because when you go back to that level of abundance, that mother load that falls on you as a result of how much you surrender during that integration prior to it, there is no right or wrong. There is no A, B, C, D, or F. You don't pass or fail. It's just what level of expansion / surrender can you experience without breaking into a million pieces, because we just pulled a million pieces back in. There's no rush.
Yeah.
So the stars and the wind and the animals and the nature beings, the birds, the red-tailed hawks, the dimensional beings that I saw in the cemetery, reptilians, the divine essences, the trees that morphed and showed me the history of the galaxy and of the earth with the morphing their limbs and their trunks, the goo, the original goo that was shown to me, the memories, the craziness, that they were my witness. And I think that's how I would answer your question. They were my witness. They were the only thing that I could see outside of myself that saw me for who I really was and what I really was, and what an incredible soul that I am and I was. Even though every single person to the last person that I loved and served thought it was crazy. It makes no sense. But what I got from that was unbeatable. It didn't make me have more money in my pocket. It didn't make me stay out of hell. When the human had to go deal with the level of activations that came from the street and from the lifestyle and the fantasy or the fantastic aspect of a 12-foot angel appearing in front of you or a 22-foot reptilian. The human struggled with that, and the human aspect of me did some crazy ass things crazy, like life threatening, like you might as well put a loaded pistol to your head kind of thing daily, mostly nightly. And then daily I would recuperate. But in the physical, this was happening, but in the non-physical, my memories are even stronger from what it was occurring simultaneously in the non-physical, which was pure hell.
Yes.
And how I learned to get out of there, even though I got thrown back in a second time for 1,000 nights, just like the first time. I learned how to become self-sufficient. I learned how to expand my power. I learned how to face fear. I learned how to stare down the devil who was walking in the door with his minions, swinging 12 and 4, sodomizing, torturing, pissing on me, whatever. I learned that this stuff in the non-physical, I guess in a way, is just as much an illusion as what's external in the physical, because it is just me,
Yeah.
So that's why I never really understood. Well, I didn't really understand the galactic part till I met Morgan, because I never had any galactic experiences. Everything was from the earth, like the dirt, the soil, the magma, the what is it? The molten rock, and but it just keeps getting better now.
There's in one of the poems that's been written, I forgot which one it is, but there's a line that says, "Let all that is not of love drown in love." And that's the experience you're talking about, where everything's literally stripped away. And that was my experience through the brain injury. There was no energetic identification left. And again, you said this is something we chose. Some of us where literally everything was stripped.
Yeah.
All at once.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what you mean about the trauma, because, as people see it, as I sit here and I'm constantly rotating my head from the brain injury, that was one of the things where my soul resonated with you, is how you always talk about the human. And you and I talked about this a little bit in Sedona, where you honor the human experience. And it's because, yes, we're eternal, and yes, we're a spirit in physical form. But your experience on the street and my experience with the brain injury undoubtedly cemented our reverence for the human experience, right? We learn how to honor the experience of a spirit in a body.
Yeah. I can't take credit for that. I knew that I was I don't want to sound way that I don't want to sound, but I'm speaking to myself. Okay. This is what I would say to them. This is what I knew about myself. So it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, right? I just don't want people to think that I'm something I'm not, because I'm truly nothing, which means I'm truly everything. And that's a beautiful place to be. And I plan on staying there. But I knew that I was not of this world. And I remember coming off the streets and telling my mother that. And mothers, for all they are and aren't for us, they do know when their kid's bullshitting or not. And she didn't blink an eye, right? So that was kind of the innate knowing. But when I was writing the poetry, and I was in, for me, and I've written many times, I suffered far less than most. For me, I was in the biggest pain, and it was a multi-dimensional pain, a multifaceted pain. And there was many, many different streams tied to me that were very thick attachments, kids, 6 kids, marriages, fathers, mothers, all kinds of things. And but when I started to write, I wrote from the pain. I always looked at the poems as sandwiches. The first layer is light, and the second layer is descended into the darkness. And of course, if there's 3 stanzas, the middle stanza is like 90% of the poem. So it's the darkness, the holy darkness, the abyss. Yeah. I didn't even know, like most of us, I didn't even know what I was writing. But then the end would be, I am soul. And I wrote many times, I am not only human, or I would write, I am not a human being, I am soul. And that was a powerful, powerful thing. Okay. And again, I'm organic. So I'm rooted, let's just say, in the lower dimension, in the lower chakras. And I reached up to what I knew innately that you might describe as the higher chakras or the higher dimensions. Then I meet somebody who I thought I was making some pretty good progress, and I was. I'd done a lot. I was working with the universe. I was creating things, and I was doing that. That stream was going good. But there was another stream, the human, who was drinking too heavily, because I still have a beer. Seriously, like every night. Every night, drinking, drugging, fighting, dancing, hoping the universe will come take me out, because I wasn't going to do that to myself. And I meet someone who says, in so many words, she says, you can't find your soul until you find your human. At least that's the way I would have said it. She said, nothing matters until you embody it. And I've told this story many times. I asked her for 2 years, every month. What does embodiment mean again? Can you tell me again? I'm kind of slow, but when I get something, I get it. My point is that I met somebody who was very galactic, who was pulling in the human, right?
Right.
And yet I was very human, pulling in, I wouldn't have termed it galactic, but I was pulling in, it was the opposite.
Yeah.
And this is all in retrospect. I couldn't have told you this at the time. But anyway, when I slowly, I started to, and it took me 2 years. It took me a long time. It took me it took me longer than 2 years. What am I talking about? It took me till late 2018, and arguably maybe even into 2019, to where I started to. I said human is the hero for one reason, but on a deeper level, because of the relationship. That's what she said. That's what her words were saying. Essentially, the human is the hero. Like, you can have all that information, but if you don't embody it, then what's the point? So that's kind of interesting that happened, and that those polarities came together, and they were both pulling from the other side of the spectrum in their own existence, meeting in the middle. And again, this is all metaphoric, and as the individual goes, so the collective goes. So there's got to be some parallel with what's what's out there for us.
Right.
But but you're right that you're right about the human thing. I just didn't want to take credit where credit wasn't due. But I have learned it, and I'm the biggest cheerleader now for that. I will gladly take that role on.
Well, I love that you mentioned that, because I was talking about Morgan this morning, and I was saying how, because she posts, but she doesn't, you don't see her a lot. Like, she doesn't do a lot of lives. And when I met her in Sedona, my breath was literally taken away. Literally. And I was talking about it today that, like, there were a few times where I kept trying to tell her how she made me feel, like her energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have words, and I was stumbling over myself. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was getting so embarrassed, because I was trying to, like, tell her, like, how she was making my energy feel. Mm-hmm. And her energy, literally, I was telling Melissa, it must reach, like, her field must reach like 2 or 3 blocks. Like, it's just an energy that takes over a room. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, she's just absolutely gorgeous. Mm-hmm. Inside, outside, you feel it. And I went through major initiations. That's probably why, from both of you. So it's probably when I got back from Sedona, why I think I took 3 weeks off. Like, I was just, like, integrating all the energy. But that leads me into my next question. And I think that for all of us that have experienced the spirit of soulogy, that I feel is a mecca, one of the meccas for New Earth. I feel like it is absolutely one of the spirits that's anchoring in the new paradigm. And you and Morgan, absolutely, your energies birth this energy called soulogy. So I know we all have these experiences, and I know the paradox of having a heart full of poetry, you, myself, that even though the poetry lives inside of us, the paradox is we understand that we will never capture the timeless in words. But with that being said, I would like to hear you tell us who is Morgan Lee? Who is Morgan Lee? What would you say to that?
You just said you can't put words to
You can't, and I'm going to make you.
I tell you what. Okay, good question. I would tell you that I would say that what, from my perspective, what she represents, and I'm going to take this out of the personal, because if I start getting personal, then we'll need 10 more boxes of Kleenexes, and I got a show in 32 minutes, so it's not a big deal. And we can go right up to the 32 minutes, no big deal. But I would say what she represents, because if we look at everything as the energy that it is, it doesn't matter if it's an individual, group, a movement, a couple. I think what she represents as the energy that she is a symbol and a sign for humanity itself. And let me say this, why? So imagine, and we can all relate to this because we're all walking into this. Imagine, let me give it to you another way. When I met her and I had a relationship in the first 2 and 3 years, which would include 1 10-week visit, and try to keep this in perspective, is myself observing a mirror that I don't understand, because I look at this mirror and remember, I reached up here, but I came from down here, so I function down here. right? Even when I have to try to deal with what I'm getting up here, I'm having to process it and integrate it down here while the drinking and the drugging and the fighting and the dancing and all that. But I was observing somebody who had it all up here, right? And who said the words that none of it means anything till you embody it. And what I couldn't understand, and I'm going to bring this back to energy and why it, in my opinion, she's a reflection of what's occurring. So somebody that had all this sacred wisdom, that dedicated 20 years and knew her shit, you know, that when she went into the human, I couldn't understand. I was used to codependent relationship frequencies, being a man, being with a woman, emotional manipulation, you know, all their characteristics. The man had all his characteristics in the Mars and Venus dance of the old 3D. And I couldn't understand that she even had that going on. Like, if you have all this up here, how can you have any problem down here? But it was the opposite. She was reaching down here and had to integrate it up there. I had to reach up there and integrate it down here. So what I'm trying to say is, as I've watched this energy, Morgan Lee, tentatively, carefully, frightenedly move into more and more power and the responsibility that goes with it. It's a huge amount of pressure on the human that's coming from galactic. So what I'm trying to say is this is what I believe all of humanity is faced with. And I think she is a representative of that, along with many others, probably for the most part, women or men like you. All right. And that is to face your own truth, your own power and capabilities, creativity, creation ability, infinity, divinity, masculinity, femininity, androgyny, totalness, completeness, holy, whole, to face all of that and embody that, and not be grandiose about it. Wounded child, wounded healer, wounded ego, not be self-serving, not be, you know, an attention grabber. Actually doing it in that space, comparative, let's say, for instance, to something like me walking the streets for 2 years, to be in that space, to get into the space that I got into last night at the same time you were doing it on the West Coast at 3 o'clock in the morning, to get back there for me personally for the first time in a couple of years. That's a beautiful space, but it's not a space that's easy to take out into the world and function and go buy your groceries and interact with people while that's all contained within you. You know, it's almost like a personal, private, spirit scientific laboratory. But this is what we're bringing to the table. This is what we're introducing to the physical realm. And this is where the universe is expanding from our experience together. So what does she mean to me? That's what she represents for me. And that's what I think the energy that you'll be seeing coming out, and you're already starting to see it more and more and more, like Saskia.
Yes.
Okay. So Marina, you know, Delia, Shanine. So on a personal level, I don't know, because when I lay down and I put my hands together and I look from the third eye and otherwise, it's a bottomless pit. And that not only is she a bottomless pit, but in that reflection, I am too. So, I can only really relate or relay things at my best in metaphor and in prose and poetry, right? And so I remember when I met her, everyone knows the story. We connected at 3:33 in the morning. I got it the next day, and I said, I got to talk to you on the phone. I talked her into it. We got on the phone, and I was already having these things happen to me, but I never talked to anyone about them. And as soon as I got on the phone, I started getting these downloads like I would get from myself, right? Like Merlin's daughter. We're in Sherwood Forest. I'm a shepherd. She's whatever you call it, a priestess, like and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then I saw this planet. And the reason I bring that up is because I remember a couple of years ago, I said to her, man, when we get to the end of this, let's go back to that planet where our house is with the castle and the purples and the greens and the rivers and the unicorns. And she's like, why would we want to do that? Now, this is, again, an energetic explanation spoken through words in a metaphoric manner. She said, why would we want to do that? I said, what do you mean? She said, why don't we create something new? And in that moment, I realized what creation was. And I realized the opportunity that we've been afforded in this realm, which is an externalization of creation. I believe that let's say that the entire multiverses have been built by nuclear cosmic explosions of a singular soul that carries let's just say, for the sake of the discussion, the masculine and feminine divine union within themselves. But now we're in a situation made in the image. All right. Made in the image. Pythagoras said that there was two dynamics. There was basically the sacred geometry, blah, 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 of the world. And then there was man. So we're in an external duality that was the fertilizer for the ascension into awareness, and then converting to physical manifestation consciously, to include bringing in the magic into the physical. This is the bottomless, endless reservoir of creation of Mother's womb, right? And so I think that we're in this space, that we can and will create new pockets, new worlds, new multiverses, new universes, new planets, new whatever, from the physical vessel, from the singular split. It's duality. Right. There's some kind of new math, and I think this is what we're gonna. This is how I feel. This is what I know in myself. This is what I seek with her. It's like Toto and the Wizard of Oz. Dorothy goes, and Toto goes to the back and pulls the curtain back, and the old man's in the okay. But instead of the old man being there, the curtain gets pulled back, in this case, and it's Todd and Morgan in there. Yeah. Right? So it's Todd and Morgan in their higher selves. I should say their higher selves, and Todd and Morgan, or whoever we're talking about, is Dorothy and the Tin Man and the Lion that's standing there looking at the big hologram of the big green face, right? So, and I got this last night. I actually got this to a higher degree, and that was, I was sitting here, she was upstairs, in her office doing whatever she was doing, or sleeping or whatever, and all four of us were present. The physical woman, the physical man, present in the energy, and the higher selves, and her higher self came into me. So this was another revelation, elevation, okay? Epiphany to elevation. When she's talking to me, she is talking to he. It's not personal. It's not about Todd, and it's not about Morgan. So when I sat here and I went and found this place to write poetry, unbeknownst to me, at the same time you're writing poetry, getting into that space, the human Todd thought for a second about Morgan and the dialogues. And her higher self came in and just gives me this grin like she always does. And I would have to say it goes something like this. And again, this isn't about me and Morgan. This is about what these four elements, masculine, feminine, divine feminine. Yes, it's in all of us, but all four elements are in us. Distorted masculine, distorted feminine, divine masculine. These are the points of friction, or that create the friction, right? And in that friction is creation. And so it would be like this, that there's been a dialogue between the male and the female. And I'm speaking again, this is energetic, this is in the physical, it can be seen many, many different ways. He's stupid, she's crazy, Mars and Venus, and there's a breakdown. So what I heard was the old one. What's one of the things that men don't do, or that women say that they don't? You don't listen. And so I'm sitting here for a second at warp speed, and I hear, and I'm like, I know I listen. Like I can, my stakes in the ground, I know this. And I was right. Okay. But then her higher self said to me, no, you don't get it. You're not listening to me. So her higher self is wanting me to connect with her from the diagonal, because say the divine genders are up here, the distorted here, right? So she's coming from across she's telling me, you're not listening to me up here. It's not that you're not listening to me down there. You are. You're not listening to me up here. This is what I bring to the table. This is why I listen to you down here, or I need to have this connection so I can understand the lower chakras, and so I can understand what's organic. Because I know in this duality, not one or the other side is going to be the right path. There's only one path, and it's dead center, 0 point soul highway, right? So that's what I learned. She said, it's not her, dummy, it's me you're not listening to. And in that moment, I was like, holy shit, I got to go to bed. It's 2:45. Next thing I know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And I've written 6 more words on these poems. This is what I got to. That being very organic, you're going to listen to your organic. You're going to listen to your favored hand, your throwing arm, right?
Right. You're
right-handed, that's where you're going to go. This essence was telling me to listen to my mirror at the higher level. To have a conversation, no different than when I do a show like this. I'm having a conversation with the higher self to higher self. And I'm having a conversation with the human to the human. Now, this essence, Morgan's higher self, is telling me, wait a minute, no, you the human, you connect with me up here. Almost like I do with mine. And I guess in a sense it is that. And maybe this is another step towards what we're bringing to the table, because we're not here just doing the same old thing. We're doing here, there's a spin to it, there's a remix to it, there's something different here, just like I said. With what we come, with what we leave. That means what we come in the door with is what we leave with. The only thing that's new is the in-between. The only thing that matters is the in-between, because whatever we came into the world with, we're going to leave with. Energy cannot be destroyed. It can be transformed, right? Einstein. So whatever we came in with, we're leaving with. So then what's the fucking deal? Well, it's the in-between. Now, what is the in-between? The in-between is what's in front of you, because the potential is the same no matter what. And if you're fortunate enough and blessed enough to have earned it, to be able to be in a space where you're in the 92nd percentile or the 96th percentile or the 95th percentile, that's pretty damn good. And so that means that whatever you're working with, it's a pretty cool. It's a good relationship. It's a good vocation or passion or whatever it is. You know, I don't know. It was a very extraordinary thing, and I got to say, the sequential aspect of what's been occurring over the last 4 weeks has been phenomenal, and it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And to put an exclamation point on that, in the middle of the night, while I'm sitting down here, out of the blue, Shanine Mooland sends me a message. Okay? Mm-hmm. She sent me a message that she could have been right there in my head. Out of the blue, just like this synchronicity with you now. Those are the signs. Now, those are the signs and the synchronicities that are really jumping out now to me. It's where you're on the West Coast at 1 a.m., which is 3 a.m. here, which is exactly when this happened. And I'm finding my soul, my poetic soul that's been compartmentalized and packed away until that moment. You know, those are the synchronicities. And that message she sent me was perfectly worded and perfectly appropriate. Oh.
That's fascinating, because I was having, you know how you said you hadn't written for a long time. That's how you started. Like it was, and you were talking about trying to find it, make time to write.
Yeah.
Last night I told Israel, this poem's like, it's taking a little longer than I'm used to. Like it would drop in like 2 words and then it would stop.
Yeah.
And then 5 words and then it would stop. And I felt it opening and closing, you know? And so when you say that, I just can't help but feel it was like I'm connecting to your spirit when I called this poem forward into the world. And as I'm connecting to your spirit, that's the experience you're having, is bringing your poetry back out. Yeah. And that's what you're talking about. That's what you're talking about, connecting higher self to higher self.
Yeah.
But still we're experiencing those wounded aspects inside of us.
Yeah. And you know what? That's reminds me that when you asked me about who was Morgan, and I talk about the more of the collective energetic symbol that she is, the signpost, right? But there's another side too as well, right? There's the energetic, and then there's the human. And I didn't finish my thought on that. And what I was trying to say is, when you step into your power as totally authentically, which means you're going to have spits and stops and starts, spurts, fits and spurts, because that's authentic. We've seen what happens to people when they go, "Oh, I got this shit figured out. I don't ever get triggered." It's falling flat. But when you have somebody who's so sensitive powerful and fragile, the polarities, strength and weakness, all the different polarities centralizing in a human body. That's like fucking, a horse coming out of his mother's womb and is all wet trying to walk. You know what I mean? And so I think the other thing that I would say about the Morgan Lees and the people like that are carrying the frequency that has not tentatively, out of fear, well, less out of fear and more out of not knowing what to do because it hasn't been done before. These are the people that are embodying and anchoring. Yes, you look at these people, like in her example, and you look at the level of profound frequency, and they do one thing and Todd does 20 shows, and they do one thing and Todd does 30 shows, and that little one thing carries this huge wake of frequency behind it, like a boat going through a lake. So what I'm trying to say is, the other thing I would say at the human level in regard to these people, which is a mirror of what we're all swimming in now, is that they're human. They're human. They have a life. They need privacy. They need to be alone sometimes. They need to be human. They need to watch a movie. They need to go to dinner with their girlfriend or their partner, or they're not your fucking Rock of Gibraltar, right? They're not your fucking savior. You know? They're not. I'm not in that category for the sake of this discussion. But I can relate to that. And I've had a hard time telling people no. And I would want to say, hey, you know how hard it is to get up and do these 3 or 4 shows a day? I'm going to do the same thing you are. It's not always that easy. I'm on my ass half the time. And then 5 minutes before I get up, drink some coffee, and I jump on. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But these people, the Saskias, the Morgans, even people like Judith Kuzel, Abigail Wainwright, Kirsty Lee Greenshields. These people are this energy, primarily feminine. I say it's all feminine energy. They're stepping up, and they are hesitant because they're not comfortable with the attention. No one would be, because no one's done it this way before. So they need some space. And in that space, it has to be free space. Like, it'd be like capturing a wild Mustang. You go into you go out into the meadow, and there's a Mustang, and he's hurt. And you take him back to the barn and you mend the Mustang. And it gets back to where she's ready to run. She's ready to start living and moving. And you're in a corral and a stockade, and you open up the gate and you say, there's your space, and the space is endless. Yeah. You know, there's no road. We're writing the new script and the new good book. And this is the energies that are leading the way, in my opinion. And they're cautious coming out because it's a lot on their, it's a lot on their being.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to respect that. But I do think we'll see Morgan coming out more. People like Morgan. I think people like Saskia. I think we'll see him coming out. it's a very complicated, multifaceted, multidimensional mix of human and all the hybrid seeds within the human DNA and all the lineage of the soul and beyond that and the oversoul and the monads and the central sun and the one before that and the one before that and all the things that we know and don't know. And it's all coming down to this fusion where the physical meets the non-physical, but the physical as represented by the human consciousness, by the human being, solid blood, sweat, bones, tissue, right? Is the one piece, is the most powerful piece. It is the newest piece. It is the newest gift to the universe, and it is not a given, which means that it is going to be what it is. And it is going to be what it chooses. And it is creating a way to merge free will and universal will into one stream. And it's never been done before. Not with all these multiplicity aspects, you know? And I think where we're going is this. I think where we're going is, so she downloaded 2 weeks ago. Service to the Trinity. There's many trinities, many triads. Service to self, service to others, service to humanity. Okay? When you can make a thought or carry a thought forward, and it's in perfect alignment with all three of those things. When you can speak something, it's perfect alignment with all those things. When you do something, it's perfect alignment with all those three things. Perfect fucking alignment. No disparity. No bullshit. And the only bullshit that's going to be coming from that perception, the perspective of judgment, is going to be from yourself.
Right.
You can ask others to do whatever the hell you want to, but if you're not doing that, I promise you, you're going to know you're not doing that. Don't talk to me about what you're unconscious of and what's in your blind spot. This goes for every one of us. So if I look at that, what does that mean? She says a copy is a copy is a copy is a copy. So what does that mean? That means that in my relationship with you, there is me, there is us, and there is them, right? Humanity.
Right.
I don't come first. You don't come first. We don't come first, and humanity doesn't come first. This is the old math where there's 1, 2, 3. This is not. This is the triad. That means that all three are the one. So in my relationship with you, in my relationship with Morgan, from my perspective, I will no longer say, I serve myself first, then I serve the relationship, then I serve the collective, let's say through soulogy. No, they're all one and the same. This is not necessarily what we're going to, where we're going to end up in some type of predestiny. This is just the potential. This is the potential. How pure can our alignment be? Would I rather be in a relationship with you, Michael, where I put myself first, then I put our relationship and then our service to others together in order? I put myself first. I bet I will gain more by making that a singular stroke in the triad energy. One corner of the triangle is the same as another, and we're all the same. And that's where I'm at today. I see that transmission that she received 2 weeks ago in regard to that as the simple, profound path. You know, simple but not easy, because it takes conscious effort. And yeah, I don't see any other way. So
Yeah.
watching the debate last night, watching this, watching that, watching these videos. I just I think I'm like everybody else. I think that over the past 30 days,
Mm-hmm.
the level of shifts, the fluctuations, like a fucking roller coaster. And I'm amazed on a personal level how smooth it's been for me. But going back to the first of the show, when you asked me about the years on the street, that's why I was talking about. There's some things that I gave up energetically there in mass,
Right.
that I'm not having to deal with now, and that's just how I did it.
Yeah.
You know. Now the flip side of that is, where everybody else was cruising along in the last 3 or 4 years, I was going like this. You know, you know what I mean? Like an out of control golf cart. You know, like you're trying to get control of it. And but what I'm saying is that this last 30 days, this is why I'm having Candace Coe and Andy Hanna come on. We're going to be late, but in a few minutes. I don't watch videos a lot. Okay. I don't watch the whole thing. If I do watch it, I just try to pick up the energy. I saw the two of them on a video 2 or 3 days ago. And in that video, I saw what I'm talking about, what Morgan downloaded. I saw, it's not you, it's not me, it's not us, it's not the collective community that we're sharing with.
Right.
It's all one thing. And that's it. You know, that's to me, that's soulogy.
Yeah.
That's soulogy. We just did this 2-day BQH sessions, right? Or yeah, that Leilani and Marilyn did, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the modality, and it wasn't the process. It wasn't the words. It wasn't where she went in dimension. It was none of that. It was all of that. It was Marilyn's grace. It was Monique's courage. It was raw. It was real. There's no mirrors. There's no mask. There's no pretensions. That's what I want to be. And if I became that on the streets for periods of time, and the stars were the witness, and that was all I needed, so that when I did come into human contact and all went to shit, unless I was dancing, because then it's still the same space. But when I had to go talk to somebody, and it all went to shit, and I unraveled, and I spun out, and I got in fights, and I went to jail, and I did this, and I did that, and I embarrassed myself, and I humiliated myself, and I antagonized myself, and I destroyed myself. I could go right back. I could go right back to that space. And now that space is materializing beyond one person in the universe. It's now being shared. Right? Yeah. So
we come back from that space, and we want to show everyone what we found, but then we realize we don't have words yet. And that's when the energy starts to come through. Something you said, like when just talking about what you know for sure, and you said earlier, you can etch this in stone, is that we have no choice. This is happening.
Yeah.
Everything will be stripped, and all that will be left is love. And we know that. And there's times where I'm talking to my parents or Israel, and I always say, there's there's an eternal patience that starts to sprout inside of your heart, because you know that everything is under divine guidance.
Yeah.
So right now, I look around, the election, I don't really pay attention to all these things. But what I do know is that a lantern has been lit, and that lantern is the law of love. And love wants to manifest completely back into the physical.
Yeah.
And this light you're talking about is eternity will be walking in form.
Yeah.
And we will be looking into our eyes as eternity, looking at itself. And that's ascension. That's pure consciousness. I think, I don't know when your show is, but I would love to have you.
We still got time. Andy's here. They know.
I would love
I want to say something about that, because
Yeah.
this is how it works, and this is what happens, and this is happening more and more and more on these shows, which is why they're becoming more difficult. And what's happening as the person is embodying and anchoring the light that you're talking about, eternity, okay, and it's becoming physical, and the voice is that merging spot, because there's an invisible visible to it, the sound visible, the invisible is there's no solidity.
Right.
You start to receive code immediately. Boom, 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 boom. And this is where the poet's heart comes out. We all have it.
Right.
That's a vision that I'm talking about. It's not an ability. It's a vision. And what that is, as you're saying that, and then going back to what I was saying in the context of the conversation, is there is nothing predestined here. It's not preordained. It's that wild horse going out into the meadow that's infinitely bound, right? No limits. To expand, to roam, right? So I'm listening to you, and I'm getting this vision of we're in these vessels. There's a percentage of eternity in us. Okay? Now hear me out. And we've cleared and cleared and cleared, and so more and more and more of eternity's embodying within us. Right. And I agree with what you said. Yeah. I can see the transformation. I can see the physicalization of the transformation. You can call it carbon to light body. Okay? And the second part of what you said, yes, it's happening anyway. Mm-hmm. It's happening anyway. And I say let go or be dragged, but now it's something else. It's something else. There's a new place. There's a new center. There's a new zero point. There's a new soul highway because of these things that have occurred, particularly recently, that were represented in the physical as a representation of the energetic field in what we experienced in Sedona, which was the frequency of what we might call on Earth divine union frequency, androgynous balance frequency, divine marriage frequency, sacred union frequency, whatever you want to call that. That created a new and higher potential field of 0 point, and I think that's what you just described. So no, it will not stop until it will not stop. It just won't until it's done. Now, what are you going to want me to do?
You've been on fire. I love that. Like, I'll say this, and then I would love you to close us out with a poem. But so you could look for whatever feels like you want to recite right now. But what I was going to say is, when I used to watch your shows, I remember I used to think, like, there would be sometimes people would come on and we've all been everything, and we're all, for whatever stage we're all in, we've seen every stage because we're integrating all of those aspects. But I used to watch people, and I always loved your humility, because people would talk, and I remember I used to always like look at you, and I'd be like, I wonder what Todd thinks about this, and and I knew that when I was kind of just sitting with myself last night before, like just kind of setting an intention for this connection that we were going to make, was I really was like, I want to feel and experience everything he unlocked. Like, I want to feel it. I want to hear it. I want to see it. And I feel like what you've done for all of us is a gift today, what's come through you. And I appreciate it. And you're one of my favorite poets. So that's why I love, and this is called The Word. So I would love to have you close us out with some of your heart poetry.
Well, I don't even know what to do with that. Hang on a second. I think I have I don't even know where to go with that. But hang on. See what we can find.
Nowhere. Merge in silence, brother.
Yeah. And that happened last night with that show with William Melchizedek. William. You met him. He was in okay.
Yeah. He's sweet.
And there was a moment where we were just staring at each other and being quiet. I thought that was really cool. And I think that's
my favorite thing to do.
I would just have to make something up. I think. I think probably, this whole thing with the masculine and feminine has been, I think it's a challenge for everybody. I think anybody that thinks that they got it figured out or they've arrived is probably fooling themselves, and I could be wrong. As long as I'm a masculine, it actually works both ways. I mean, it's getting so intertwined now as androgyny is anchored through these couples, be they same sex or not, and through androgynous beings in both. You find your true masculine through your femininity. And you find your true feminine through your masculinity. So what does that mean? If I have a charge when it comes, and in my case, everybody's different because it just depends on what your a lot of things, your sexual energy, your human sexual preferences, your cultural impressions, your everything. So, but for the most part, and I'll use myself as an example, if I see, and again, it just gets so cliche, but if I see distortion in a gender, I'm seeing separation from me. If I see distorted feminine, then there's distorted feminine in me.
Yes.
Because if I look at distorted feminine, I'm now seeing that as separate from me. And this is why I said last night that the distorted masculine and the distorted feminine and the divine feminine and the divine masculine are all part of that thing I experienced last night. The two higher selves, the two humans, the two humans weren't in the same room, right? But this isn't the field or the dimensional field that we're in. This field that we're in is not just the physical. Okay, so this is the last line of separation. Look, I feel very confident in myself that I found my feminine after 50-something years, right? I had it when I was a kid, and then it went into the program, and I became an alpha male, right, and all that shit. So, and I say that because even though that may be true for me, it's still a conscious evolution. And this is that field of potential that we've been given. How far do you want to take it? And there's no wrong answer. But I feel like that this is what's being emphasized now. It looks like Trump and Biden, and it looks like pro-Q and anti-Q and BLM and Blue Lives Matter. It looks like all that stuff, but it's not. It's the masculine and the feminine, which are most likely, okay, in my opinion, most likely attributes that apply in this realm in a much grander way than most likely other realms, because it's dense.
Right.
I mean, this is huge.
Yes.
If you go to a planet and it's 8 dimensions this way, and there's this much more higher intelligence frequencies and this much less duality, making or getting to a point of integration of the masculine and feminine, and therefore expanding in some fashion, is not as big a challenge. We're coming from a very, very dense physical matter.
Yeah.
And now we're being faced with that. And we're being supported. But I think that if we want to knock down the biggest domino, as far as I could see it at this point, it is to, and forget your sexual preference, forget your gender, forget all that shit. Does that mean as I integrate and become 0 point on feminine and masculine that I won't be as much of a man? No, that's not what it means. I'll be more of a man, okay? And you'll be more of a woman, right? Or whatever the situation is. So if we looked at that, and that's the biggest domino.
Yeah.
You can bring unity and oneness to that. It's the biggest domino, and it's also the biggest, or the birth canal for new creation, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. The masculine, feminine, androgynous thing has just exploded to me in the last 30 days. That's not poetry, but
No, I like that. I want to touch on that because it goes along with what I dreamt last night. And that was you're talking about, because I saw this in my dream. I literally saw the dichotomy between everything you were talking about. Blue, red, Republican, Democrat, all of these movements. And then I heard a voice break it down. And it was talking about the schism. And it said that therein lies the work. There's the work. The work is wherever you see something separate as self, separate from self, like you're saying, that's where you're still wounded.
yeah.
Right. And so when we look at everything right now, everything that feels it needs to prove a point or make you see or believe the way they see or believe, they're literally looking through the eyes of dichotomy. And so right now, everything that is a movement, even though there's this living paradox, because karmic retribution is real and it's happening and we see it, and
That's
we're
right.
able to honor that. But while we honor the atonement, the collective atonement, this atonement will not reach equilibrium until everything recognizes itself in everything.
Yeah.
And so I love that.
Yeah. And I look, Michael, if you have, look, if I have a charge with the distorted masculine, if I have a charge with the distorted feminine, it doesn't matter what my gender is. But
Right.
the more conviction I have, because conviction doesn't live in 5D. All right. There's only truth, so there's no need for conviction. There can be faith,
Right.
but if I have a charge, if I get upset, if I look down upon, if separation is separation, it's never going to be solved until I admit it in myself.
Yes.
I listened to Morgan talk to some clients as I'm walking in, walking out. And there's obviously, there is complexity, but there's very simple um, components of what's going on. And in her modality is set up that way. One of the things you'll hear is subservient. As a woman, which a lot of that I was subservient. I've been subservient. Well, guess what? I've been subservient, and I'm a
Yes.
man. Was it the distorted masculine in me or the distorted feminine in me? I think it was the distorted feminine in me.
Mm.
Because as my feminine was leading the way in the first 7 or 8 years, and it started to get knocked down a few notches, what does that mean? That means that my masculine and my feminine were both becoming distorted, right?
Right.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is if we want to look for, show me a racist who isn't a misogynist.
Mm. Yes.
Okay. Show me someone who's extremely nationalist or religious zealot who isn't a misogynist or a man hater. I mean, these, you know what I mean?
No,
So
yes. What you're saying is huge. What you're tapping into is big, because that's what we're experiencing is that's like when I talked on TV show the other day, and I talked about the politics of attachment. And when I said, when I was releasing that I understood that looking out, it was like, oh, like there's wounds, right? Like people still are heavily attached, right? Until you literally feel formless,
yeah,
until you feel faceless, until you feel timeless, right? You're still attached to something that's making you suffer.
yeah,
You're literally perpetuating, you're holding on to your own suffering.
that's right.
And you're holding on to the desire of the pain, which is to stay alive.
Yeah,
But the desire of the soul is to experience the spirit.
that's right.
And we're feeling that right now. And I love what you say, because you've been saying this. And this is why when I watch we can't, right? When people talk about, like you said, conviction is obsolete in the fifth dimension. And Morgan said this a while ago, so is forgiveness.
That's right.
Because in the fifth dimension, everything is serving you.
That's
So
right.
there's no need to ever forgive. That's not how you're processing experience anymore. Right? And conviction, that's why when you see, I need to forgive, this is toxic, I'm convicted. If you believe this, don't talk to me anymore. If all of these are literally telling signs of old programs still moving through the psyche, formulating thought, and then being released as action.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, no, I mean, you're speaking my language, but
and I think that's why too. I know we got to go, but I think that's why too. You don't just go into solitude,
right,
to figure shit out. You go into solitude, and solitude can be for 20 minutes. It can be for the 2 days. You know,
right,
solitude is last night at 1 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast, 3 o'clock in the morning here is an opportunity to be in that space, that non-distorted space. How else can you expand your confidence in your essence if you're out of your element in distortion, which is duality?
right,
Okay, so that alone time is very important, and it can certainly at an individual level, as couples and groups come together, I think it's the same thing.
right.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that cultivating the 5D, cultivating New Earth, the natural nature that we are, uh, yeah, I don't. I mean, I think it's very important to go into that little spirit science laboratory and do whatever you want to do. You know, do what makes your heart sing. Do those things that you're. I mean, we all can relate to this. There's things that we would love to do in front of people, but we just don't have the nerve.
Yeah.
So this is where we're going. That's another metaphor.
Yeah.
This is where we're going. I heard Morgan when we were in Sedona. We were driving home with Kalina and William. They were giving us a ride home, and I heard Morgan go into the Morgan I hear every night, like when we commune.
Right.
Like they were talking about something, I don't remember. Then she just went boom, like boo. You know, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That everybody has that in some form, and that's what's coming out, and that because it's physical, and it requires thought, word, action, alignment, right? And it's going into that other holy trinity of self, other, and humanity. That's where we're all going. That is going to happen. And just like the universe is going to take everything away from you that it has to in order for you to step up to the plate, it doesn't have to, but just like it will do that. You can also understand that we will all be out there, you know, leading the charge at some point or another. And this is because this is the best thing for humanity and other people is to give them the expression of your relationship with the divine in all its different flavors. I'm honored to be on your first show.
Thanks, brother.
And
everything.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I would prefer not to have come on and go through all these tissues, but I knew it was important. I was totally discombobulated. But I've also learned too that, you know, we put so much pressure on ourselves, so much judgment. I'm finding it easier and easier every day just to go, not like I don't give a shit, like not like that. Just like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Like, there is a difference. I can either be like sweating the load, or I can just go, you know what? I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing the best I can. And I can live with that. And I think a lot of people, if they really look at themselves, could say the same thing and deserve to about themselves and each other.
Well, and something that meant a lot to me, and I think I expressed it a little earlier, was I really wanted, because I mean, you are a brilliant conversationalist, interviewer, that energy, but I really, you have been a powerful guiding post for me, and I wanted to experience all of that, and I did, and I know everyone else did today, and I thank you. And just hanging out with you is fun. Hanging out with you in Israel before we started was fun, you know. And I have so much love, and just going with it all. So much love to you. Thank you for doing this, and we'll be with you soon.
Andy and Candace are out there. I'll meet you in the studio in 2 minutes. Thanks, Mark. Thank you a lot. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.